Fury was released in 2014 and directed by David Ayer. David Ayer is the guy responsible for directing Street Kings, End of Watch, which is a really good film. He recently also directed The Beekeeper, which I actually ended up enjoying a lot, especially for a B movie, no pun intended. Everybody's made that pun. But he also directed Fury, and this is a war film taking place in World War II. And this is one of the, I wouldn't say few, but one of the handful, we'll just go with that, of war films that I actually very much enjoy. Recently reviewing Land of Bad, I felt like talking about possibly a few war films that I actually do like. I'm an anti-war guy. I like watching films that go against war and show why war is not a good thing instead of glorifying war, such as Apocalypse Now and movies like that do. Although Apocalypse Now, I will say, is a masterpiece, and I do enjoy that one as well. It's one of the extremely rare exceptions of a film that I find glamorizes war way too much that I actually enjoy. Usually I do not watch those films. I could not do The Hurt Locker. I have no interest. A lot of war films I just have no interest in. I didn't enjoy Black Hawk Down a whole lot either. Found that a little bit too war glorifying. Personally, anyway. I mean, everybody's going to have their own opinions and views on everything. But to me, these films just didn't work. Fury is great. Fury is and it's kind of split. Again, it's another one. It's anti-war, but it does have moments where it kind of does glorify it a little bit. So I'd say it's kind of in the middle. But for all intents and purposes, for the most part, this film does quite a job depicting war as this horrific, violent, brutal, inhumane thing, which it absolutely is. David Ayer is also a director who he focuses more on like really tiny pieces of a story, like a situation. He focuses on situations more so than he does linear plots and linear stories. Like, he's not a driven plot kind of guy. He's more of like a fly on the wall director, a moment in time director that captures, for this film in particular, a day in the life of these soldiers that basically run a tank, this tank crew. And the tank's name is Fury. That's where the name comes from. And this is World War II. Like I said, this is the very end of World War II in April of 1945, when Hitler basically, as a last resort, just started putting everybody on the battlefield, like men, women, and children. Just everybody's going out to fight. And it was like his last hurrah kind of thing. And these Americans are in Germany, and they're, like I said, a tank crew, and they're going town to town, kind of infiltrating everything, taking it over, killing as many Nazis, or they call them Krauts in this film, as they possibly can, and creating as much havoc as they possibly can to end the war, and to force the Germans to surrender, essentially, because the Germans were basically on the brink of surrendering, and it was literally months before the end of the war. Everybody in this film is fantastic. You have Brad Pitt playing Don Collier, and he is the sergeant of he's like the leader of everybody, and he plays his part very well. Michael Pena also plays his part very well. He plays this guy named Grady. I'm sorry, he plays Gore. Grady, we'll get to him, but Michael Pena plays Gordo, and he's this very hardened, like calm and not calm, but collected badass. Like when he's yelling at the crew, when he's saying. When he's angry, he doesn't really show anger. He shows like direction and like forwardness, and he just like calls things directly, and the way he speaks is like a controlled and contained type of anger that's kind of hard to describe unless you see it on screen. But he's very badass that way. He also gets very unlikable though, and that's funny for Michael Pena, because I don't think I've ever seen any other film with Michael Pena in it where you don't love him, where you don't like root for his character and just think he's awesome. This one, there's moments in him where you really don't like this guy, but you really don't like any character in this film. That's the thing. Other than the young character, the guy that you're basically following mostly throughout the film. His name is Norman, and he comes in at the beginning of the film, and I don't know if he's lying about his age. Maybe he is, but he's basically a complete newbie, and he wants to join this tank crew along with Brad Pitt's character and everybody else to go on the front lines. And we're mostly following him because he's the one with the biggest character arc, and he's the one with the biggest growth in the movie because he's starting as this like inexperienced, as an understatement, little young kid, and just having the complete morality and life and innocence just pulled right out of him. So really, really crazy stuff, and it doesn't take any time at all for him to break. Like half hour into the movie, maybe 45 minutes, he's in this tank, and there Michael Pena's beside him, and this is where Michael Pena was saying like knows how to do anger but collectedly, and he's yelling at the kid to shoot bodies on the floor, and the kid's like, they're already dead, I'm not going to shoot dead bodies and waste ammo on dead bodies. And Michael Pena is like, shoot them so they don't get back up and shoot them, or shoot our asses from behind or whatnot. And he just breaks down. The Norman, he's just like, I want to get the fuck out of here. And you just see his like breakdown, like his mental breakdown in this scene. And it like I said, it took no time at all for him to just break. And there's gruesome moments, gruesome war moments in this film. There's a scene where somebody goes into a tank and that they just like threw a bomb into or whatever, and there's this character inside the tank, and he looks down, and there's literally a piece of face literally on the on the ground or whatever. It just shows it's a chunk of somebody's face, but the face is still detailed. Like you'll see the eye and like half the nose and the cheek, and it looks like a cutout, like something you would see in a horror movie. Clearly, it's just shit like that, man. Like it really goes for it. There's a scene where Brad Pitt is yelling at the kid again because the kid, I call him a kid, but he's just because he's young, Norman, refused to shoot these German kids, and Brad Pitt's character drags him out and shows him like a body that was lit on fire. And he's like, see what these kids can do? See what these kids can do? Next time you just shoot and ask questions later, kind of thing. Because, there's no, like, good and evil is out the window when it comes to this environment and this atmosphere. And that's why I look at war as such a, just, there's nothing, I don't understand who would want to go. Like, who says, you know what, when I grow up, I want to go to war. I want to be a soldier. Like, you gotta have no idea what it's like. I've never been to war, but I have a pretty good idea I don't want to be anywhere near that. I'd rather die. Join the war or shoot me. Okay, shoot me. Shoot me. I'm not going to war. I'll tell you that much. And there's this other brutal scene involving Norman again and Brad Pitt, where Brad Pitt captures one of the German soldiers, a Kraut, and forces basically Norman to shoot him as this like initiation kind of situation. And he gives him the gun, and Norman doesn't want to do it. This is where Norman basically asks Brad Pitt to shoot him instead. But Brad Pitt like forces him down, forces the gun in his hand, and forces him to shoot the German soldier, and it's just insane. I liked Brad Pitt's character Don. He was badass. He was experienced, and he speaks German. He speaks fluent German in this film. I don't know how well Brad Pitt speaks German in real life, but in this film, the character speaks fluent German and is able to understand everybody and speak to the Germans fluently. And I don't know. It just gave him and his character this characteristic of like intelligence and a better demeanor, I guess. Even though he is a shit person, and there's this scene smack in the middle of the film that I'm really going to get into detail with, that shows everybody's flaws, and I really had the hardest time watching this specific scene. It's when they get into a town that they just infiltrated, and they go into this like apartment building. There's these two women up there. One of the women is named Emma. She's kind of around seemingly Norman's age, and they just completely make themselves at home. Brad Pitt's character Don and Norman are up there, and they're completely making themselves at home. They're getting like a meal ready at the table. These women have no idea what's going on. They're German. They don't speak any English. Brad Pitt's able to communicate with them and understand them, but Norman is not. And Brad Pitt like just says, "Hey, basically, like Emma's this girl's right here. She looks hot. If you don't take her, I will," kind of thing. He's just making himself food. At this point, he takes off his shirt, and there's this scene where Norman is playing piano, and Norman looks at Brad Pitt's back, and it's just absolutely covered with scars, like neck to friggin' waist. Just everybody loses their humanity in this, and Norman does take Emma to the bedroom, but he like is very gentle with her, and he like starts to fall for her, kind of thing. Where Brad Pitt is basically having none of it. And down on the ground, at the tank, at the Fury tank, you have Gordo, but played by Michael Pena, and Shia LaBeouf's character Boyd, and this other guy Grady, who I mentioned. Grady's the worst. Grady is the one who was a sack of shit the most and just didn't have any humanity left in him. And Michael Pena takes this woman, this German woman, I assume, maybe she's French, but I think she's German, to the tank, and he brings her into the tank, and seemingly to have sex, obviously, and then it keeps on going back where it shows one guy coming out of the tank and then another one going in to fuck this woman. So clearly they're just doing a train on this woman one at a time, and I think that's what they wanted to do with Emma upstairs as well. But it's just it's scuzzy. It's like scummy. It doesn't play sexy at all. It just plays really scuzzy and disgusting. The way they just take prizes essentially. I don't know. David Ayer had an eye for the camera to really make it really unpleasant to see. And then I love Shia LaBeouf's line in that scene where one of them goes into the tank and he's just like, "I hope you get scabies." I hope you get scabies. Funny story, years and years ago, I ended up in a bed bug situation, and I went to the doctor because I didn't really know what bed bugs were at that time. But the doctor diagnosed me with having scabies when it was actually bed bug bites, but for some reason the doctor didn't know that. And I treated my marks as scabies, so I took all these baths with these like turmeric baths and stuff like that, trying to get rid of the scabies. But it was bed bugs, but they wouldn't go away, and I didn't realize till like a week later that it was bed bugs, not scabies. But at that time, the research I did on scabies sounded really disgusting. So it's actually kind of a good thing that I didn't have scabies and it was just bed bugs. And the bed bugs were actually much easier treated and way, way less disgusting in comparison to scabies. So that's my quick story. So yeah, these guys, Michael Pena included, and the dirtbag Grady, go upstairs to this apartment where Brad Pitt and Norman are at, and they just start hitting on Emma, and you can tell that with their inhumanity that they just want to take Emma, use her as an object kind of thing. But Brad Pitt is there as like the controlling guy, like the guy with the head on his shoulders, and he doesn't let anything bad happen. And he's really like, I don't know where Brad Pitt's character stands because he's not a good person either, but he's more moral than everybody else for sure. And I think he's just like, he has the most humanity, obviously, but he's very about business, and he's very like, do something only if you have to. Don't do something just for shits, kind of thing. I think he's that guy. That's the impression that I got. But these guys, they just start eating around the table. They start acting like pigs. One of them starts to tell a story about, I think it's Michael Pena actually, about a situation that they were in France where there was a bunch of horses and they just started massacring a bunch of horses. And this is something that Brad Pitt doesn't want to talk about, and started getting really angry about, like, that this was brought up. Everybody just acts like an asshole, and this whole apartment scene with Emma and the other woman is just not fun to watch. It's just not fun to watch at all. And then it ends off where once they're, like, before they leave the city, there's an attack on the building and the whole thing just crumbles down and you see Emma's body, and then Norman just freaks out because he really had this connection with this girl, and then such horrible things happened in that room, in that apartment, and then like 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, Emma loses her life. So her last moments was just being like treated like a thing. It leaves a very, very sour taste in your mouth, and like this film is so well made and so well done, but it's not a very enjoyable watch. Like this just shows you the darkest parts of humans and what humans are capable of and what humans have done and what humans will of course do again, because that's just how we are. There's brutal kills in this. There's one scene where this German guy's on a German tank, and he sticks his head out, and then this tank shot comes at him, and he just literally disintegrates into nothing. Like, he literally just disintegrates into nothing. It's crazy. And it's also just brutal how, Brad Pitt, the woman, when he's leaving, asks him where he's going, and he basically says, we're going to the next town, and then the next town, and then the next town, and then the next town, until you all surrender, meaning the Germans. And, he's there to do his fucking job. He's there to do his job as a soldier, and he doesn't... Killing is a normal, everyday thing to him at this point, so his humanity, like I said, is gone. My favorite character probably in this film is Shia LaBeouf's character, Boyd. Shia LaBeouf, in real life, I think at this point too, is a very religious guy. He's definitely, like, extremely faithful, and his character in this film is very faithful. And today, especially, he's, like, crazy with the faith and religion stuff. But yeah, like, his character, just his demeanor, I liked him the most because he seemed the most down to earth. I love the stories behind the scenes of this film, of the director and everybody who worked with this crew and cast said that everybody smelled horrible because they really went into the method acting, and there's nobody that went more into the method acting than Shia LaBeouf. Apparently he didn't shower for literally weeks, like no showers. He wanted to be as much of a real World War II soldier as he possibly could. There's a lot of horror stories behind this film, behind the scenes of this film, I mean. But I just loved Shia LaBeouf's character, and there's this one scene where he's in the tank with everybody, and he quotes this quote from the Bible, and I was going to write it down in my notes, but I actually have it, so I decided to just take the page and quote it instead. Shia LaBeouf quotes, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Here I am,' I said, 'send me.'" That's Isaiah chapter 6. I love that quote. And "send me," the whole idea of him kind of acting kind of like a second coming almost, but in a really disturbing way because we're talking about war. And then Don, played by Brad Pitt, recognizes that, and he says Isaiah chapter 6, and then this just creates this bond between Boyd, played by Shia LaBeouf, and Don, played by Brad Pitt. And it feels like almost their last moments too, because at this point, the third act of the film is basically the tank breaks down, one of the whole, like, tracking wheels pieces just, like, snaps, and the tank is not going anywhere pretty much. And then you have all these Germans infiltrating them, and there's like 300 soldiers coming at them, so it's like 5 versus 300. So they're taking refuge in this tank, and they're sipping a bottle of whiskey and passing it around, and this quote comes out. They're just having this moment, this, like, I guess you could say last supper, but it's more so last drink kind of thing. It's powerful. It's really powerful. The color palettes too in this whole thing, it takes place at night, and the entire color palettes are just black and yellow. Blacks and golds and yellows, and warm but really brutally chilling at the same time. Really great stuff. And there's a tank battle before that, and there's just gunfire and cinematography that is just captivating beyond belief. Like, man, the cinematography should have won awards in this film. You have soldiers coming up to the tank and dropping bombs inside, and, while watching this, I'm putting myself in their shoes and how absolutely terrified I should be and how close I would be to just shooting myself and ending it. Like, because the fear would just be that much. And the claustrophobia being in the tank and everything. At the end of the movie, Norman escapes the tank from this hatch that's on the floor of the tank and goes underneath the tank to hide. And at this point, bombs are dropped into the tank, and Brad Pitt loses his life, and Shia LaBeouf was shot already, and everybody's down except for Norman. He's the sole survivor. He's underneath the tank, and this SS soldier comes along, and you can see SS on his jacket. And he looks at him with a flashlight, and he looks at Norman, and he sees him, and Norman puts his hands up, and you're thinking he's done for, right? he's going to be captured and tortured. But no, the SS soldier leaves and pretends he's not there. Like he just turns a blind eye and pretends he never saw anything. And it's never really explained why. I have no idea if he like saw in Norman something, like saw himself in Norman, or it's not explained at all. It's totally left up to the viewer to interpret that. But yeah, that's, he falls asleep under the tank because the SS soldier just pretends he wasn't there. All the soldiers leave thinking that everybody's dead and there's nobody left to hunt. And then the morning comes, and Norman goes back inside the tank, and then the lid on the tank is lifted, and Norman is like has his gun ready to shoot, but it's American soldiers, and American soldiers rescue Norman, and Norman is the sole survivor, and the movie ends that way. But ends again with the most amazing cinematography and music and powerhouse just mood that I've ever seen. This is beautiful filmmaking, but it's horrible and totally uncomfortable to watch. And that's part of the reason, like, it's supposed to be uncomfortable to watch. That's part of the reason why I like it so much, is that anti-war stuff that this has. And then you throw in powerhouse performances from everybody, and it's just a work of magic, honestly. Fury is such a great film. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. It's close to like 4.5 or 5 out of 5, but just because of the complete like uncomfortable viewing experience of the whole thing, I think 4 out of 5 merits it okay, and it still like is something to be watched if you like war films, and if you can handle that kind of stuff, because there's not a lot of films that have this much power. There's lots of them, but they're not released every single month. You know what I mean? Like it's only every once in a while that a film this powerful and this powerhouse comes along. So David Ayer did a very good job with this, and every performance in this film is amazing. Even though not a whole lot of characters in this film are enjoyable people. Norman's awesome, and I'm glad Norman made it through the entire film. But it really, really shows inhumane and how dirty people can be, how disgusting people can morally be when they're thrown into a complete hell of a situation. And that's just a excerpt and example of human nature, pretty much, which is kind of unfortunate. But I highly recommend Fury. I think it's one of the best war films that exist, and you won't be let down with the performances or the cinematography in it, because it just looks exceptionally beautiful, even though the subject matter is exceptionally grim. So subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned for those. Check out what's on the channel already. Stay tuned for what's coming. Until next review, have a good one. Take care and cheers.